Somewhere on the Black Sea coast where there are no-fly zones and secret underground tunnels, you can take the most expensive dump in the world after singing hymns and watching a scantily clad woman slide down a pole. You can then retire to the hookah lounge and maybe have a smoke with the president of Russia. And that's just the tip of the gilded iceberg on today's episode of the Infographics Show, inside Putin's secret billion-dollar palace. Number 10. Home Comforts. In 2021, 2 days after Russian opposition leader and anti-corruption activist Alexei Navalny was arrested after barely surviving a Novichok cocktail, his team released an in-depth documentary titled Putin's Palace – History of World's Largest Bribe. While there might not be a smoking gun, there's definitely evidence to suggest the owner of this house is indeed Putin. Located near the resort town of Gelinchik in southern Russia, the palace is one of the most secretive places in all of Russia. It's a home away from home where Putin and his oligarch buddies can lay back and take advantage of the conveniences that cost $956 million to build. And that was just the construction cost. If we're talking about the value of everything that's in it, we're looking at maybe $1.4 billion. So what does one get for one's giant pile of rubles? If we look at the basics, you get about 74 hectares of prime real estate. The actual palace, the main building, is about 17,700 square meters, and it includes 11 bedrooms. Obviously, the master of the house needs his own space, and he gets it with a master bedroom that clocks in at 260 square meters. The bed, a four-poster, sits under a gilded ceiling surrounded by velvet curtains and large windows where one can look out at the sea. There's a large walk-in closet where Putin might keep his $10,000 coats, $2,400 sweaters, and $5,000 suits that he's been seen in public in. You might find a pair of his Salvatore Ferragamo or John Loeb shoes, which can retail at over $1,000. As for the ensuite bathroom, something we'll look more closely at later when we discuss the finer details of Putin's toilet duties, there are 4 marble columns surrounding a jacuzzi headed by a couple of comfortable-looking armchairs, where we guess you can rest in the event of an expensive orgy. What's maybe confusing here is there are 4 telephones in the master bedroom, 1 on the bedside table and 3 in the 2 adjoining living rooms. Why would anyone need 4 telephones, and why not just use your Apple or better still your Huawei? Well, maybe when you have to get on the blower to a national leader, you'll need a secure line. Okay, but what about security? Just how secure is Putin's pad? Number 9. Security. The short answer is very. You can be sure no one will be sneaking in and wandering around the corridors of Putin's palace. No siree. You can't even fly over it. It's classified as Prohibited Special Use Airspace P-116, aka a no-fly zone. You won't see any planes passing over the forests nearby, which Navalny said is home to Putin's dacha. It's about 7 miles away from the palace, where there's a vineyard and a winery, and where secret recordings show us that classical music is played to the wine to make it age better. Yeah, that's a thing, apparently. If you somehow went wandering and got within a few miles of the palace, you would be greeted by nice men with big guns. Images show a checkpoint where guards, some of them likely FSB, would sternly tell you to turn around or just throw you in jail. The whole area around the palace has been called a separate state inside Russia, since these checkpoints protect what's essentially a border zone. According to Navalny's documentary, which was made by his anti-corruption foundation, the FBK, the palace itself is surrounded by impregnable fences. It's not 100% certain what's underneath the palace, but it's suspected that there's an underground tunnel that leads to a port on the coast, in case Putin may one day need to get out ASAP. The coastline, of course, is privately owned by Putin and some of his oligarch buddies. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference in terms of who owns what. If the critics are to be believed, the funding of the palace was a way for Putin's inner circle to hide their extreme wealth. As for making the coastal getaway, one of the super yachts tied to Putin, the Olympia, was once spotted in the water close to the palace. It's rumored Putin has a collection of luxury boats, quite a feat for a man who's supposed to be collecting a paycheck of about $140,000 a year. The Olympia, it's rumored, was a gift worth $35 to $50 million from one of the many oligarchs that the British once rolled out the red carpet to, Mr. Roman Abramovich, a big spender and once a hero of Chelsea FC. So who actually built Putin's holiday home? Number 8. Palace construction. Like so many Russian oligarchs with a taste for luxury, Putin chose the Italian architect Lanfranco Cirillo to design his palace. Cirillo had a studio in Moscow, so he's no stranger to wealthy Russians. He's got about 140 architects and engineers working for him, and his business has pulled in about $30 to $40 million after building or designing mega houses for 44 Russian billionaires. As for keeping the construction a secret, some of the laborers later talked to the media, saying they could not believe just how opulent the palace was. They had to work in secrecy and live in chartered houses nearby. Each day they had to pass through a checkpoint where sometimes they waited for hours to be let through. They weren't allowed to take their phones to work, but some still managed to sneak them in, and that's why we have so many images. Some of the images come from when the palace was being rebuilt. Disaster struck a few years after it was finished. It had a serious mold problem which led to leaking in nearly all of the rooms and some very costly refurbishments. One of the rooms hit hard by the flooding was the theater, a place that wouldn't look out of place on Broadway. Now let's talk about that and some of the other grandiose features of Putin's leaky pad. Number 7. Furnishings. If you ever get an invite to a performance here, you'll pass through the main hall, which if you look up has frescoes on the ceiling depicting cherubs firing arrows into the clouds. Dangling from that same roof are chandeliers made by the best in the world, companies such as Baguet and Baccarat from France, and Aris, Estro, and Luminara in Italy. Two of the French-made crystal chandeliers in one of Putin's rooms sell for 100 million rubles, or a cool $1 million bucks, and there are chandeliers in about every major room of the palace. Everything is expensive, even the wallpaper, which is made by French firm Anambo. And if you look online, its designs can set you back almost $2,000 for a 6-meter by 3-meter sheet. Just to compare, we found SpongeBob wallpaper online for 22 bucks a meter. Vladimir, now you know who to call when you need your next interior designer. There are 47 sofas in total in the palace, with just one of them in the photos, a leather one, retailing at over $200,000. A fabric sofa with 20 fluffy pillows on top of it will set you back $42,000. You can find a tempered glass vase that sells for $36,000, and that was just one of many sitting near a single coffee table with a melted metal finish that currently sells for $57,000. In another room, one of the tables contains a built-in bar. It retails for over $49,000. In the guest rooms, there were sets of chairs that retail at $9,000 each, and in the bedrooms, there were dressing tables that come in at about $26,000. In another room, 2 handmade French carpets would cost around $100,000. After checking current prices online, investigators said the furniture and fittings in just one of the many rooms added up to about $1.5 million. That's a lot considering the average Russian salary in 2023 was $630 a month. Now imagine working a full year so you could afford a 20th of a sofa. Number 6. Private church. History shows us that robbing the poor to feed the rich takes a lot of faith, so of course Putin's palace has its own indoor Byzantine church. It is quite spectacular, replete with a triptych iconostasis that features Mary and Joseph and a third figure who, according to reports, is Great Prince Vladimir. The investigator said this is probably the only room where the name of the real owner of this place is directly indicated. Does Putin see himself as royalty? Well, that might depend on who you ask. Navalny certainly thought Putin had royal aspirations, evidenced by the golden double-headed eagles all over the palace, a throwback to the time of the czars. One of them sits on top of the front gate. It's an exact replica of the eagle that used to be on the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, so yes, Putin's palace looks fit for a king. Now let's get outside, which is frankly more mind-blowing. Number 5. Gardens. The gardens are something special. There's an arboretum which, if you look closely, is lined with rare tree species. Close by is a greenhouse, a huge building that's 26,000 square feet. If you look even closer, you can see sculptures hanging around. Behind them, a church building, and close to that, an almost 260-foot bridge crossing over into the forest. Yes, he built his own bridge, not some rickety rope bridge, a proper bridge. If you cross it, you'll find a tea house, and you might be imagining something small where gray-haired ladies chomp on some British scones. But the tea house is just a nickname for what is a huge guest house. Then there's a large space reserved for 2 helipads. If you look at old photos, there used to be 3, but now one of them has disappeared. Where it used to be is a giant mound of grass that covers some kind of building. There are lots of entrances into it, so you might be inclined to think underneath is Putin's Batman-esque cool weapons factory, but it's actually nothing so sinister. Putin loves ice hockey, so it seems he built a full-size hockey rink in a 5-story enclosure because, well, why not? Putin evidently doesn't do things by halvesies, and who knows, maybe Disney on Ice will get a call. Before we get into the absurd stuff, let's see how the palace functions. Number 4. Utilities. If you walk along a winding road from the hockey rink, you'll come across a high tower and a few normal-looking buildings. It's believed this part of the grounds helps the palace to be self-sustainable. There are oil pipelines leading into it and buildings for electricity. The high tower is for communications. There's even a gas station up there and a huge set of garages, as big as plane hangars where you could keep numerous vehicles. At the side is another huge residential building, like a large hotel, which is probably where all the staff live, the 30 or so gardeners that work in the palace every day, and the numerous security personnel. Behind that is HQ, where it's likely the managers and foremen take care of the day-to-day operations. As for cooking, Putin has everything covered. He has it more than covered, with a separate workshop for meats, fish, and vegetables, because who wants cross-contamination in a country noted for poisoners? There's a separate bakery and even something called an egg processing plant. And nearby, there's even a warehouse for mud because, well, you can never have enough mud. This isn't just a palace, it's a small town. It even has its own outdoor amphitheater, perfect for an emperor. So now let's talk about the entertainment at Chateau de Putin. Number 3. Entertainment. Putin obviously likes to wind down after a day of messy geopolitics. His outdoor amphitheater is ideal for concerts or shows, although the place always seems to be under construction, so maybe the end result is yet to be achieved. Indoors, you can watch movies at the home cinema. The blueprints show that the cocktail lounge is right next to the cinema, so after your Moscow Mules, you can go watch Rocky IV, up to where the iron-fisted drug cheat Ivan Drago smashes Apollo Creed into a blood-spangled pulp. Right underneath the cellar, you can sweat off the booze in the private gym where all the equipment is again top-notch, made by Panatta from Italy, Hoist in the USA, and Les Mills in New Zealand. There's a music room next door, and next to that, there's a reading room where you can relax and while away the hours over some Dostoevsky. Then there's the hookah lounge. We said hookah, not the other word for women of the night. Although the palace design would suggest that naked women might have been on the menu from time to time. We say that because there's a stage in the lounge from which a dancing pole pops out. We can't say if it was made for strippers, but seriously, what else would one do with a pole on a stage? There's also a casino nearby, even though gambling is not permitted in much of Russia. Here, there's a roulette table and 2 card tables where we guess sheiks and Russian natural gas tycoons play high-stakes hold'em. Maybe the most surprising aspect of this palace is what's in the room next door, which doesn't immediately make you think billionaires. It's a gaming room, labeled on the plans as the Hall of Entertaining Games, whose centerpiece is a dancing machine, the kind you see in arcades. This must be for the kids who visit, but who knows, maybe Putin is partial to the odd game of Dance Dance Revolution Extreme. All around the walls in that room are slot machines and old arcade games, on which we would guess Putin always plays Zangief and kicks Guile's butt in Street Fighter II. Now that sounds ridiculous, but if you look at the photos of the room, it looks like there is Street Fighter, Pac-Man, and every politician's favorite, Mortal Kombat. As for Pac-Man, well, that kinda fits in with the greed is good palace ethos. If you think it's a little unusual, in the adjoining room is a racetrack, a miniature one, under a cabinet of little race cars. The track winds around a model with famous streets and buildings and mountains, like a Russian version of Scale X-Trick built by Ivan the Terrible. Now for the really weird stuff. Number 2. Special rooms. If we had to choose our personal favorite, the room we would like to have if we met the criteria for oligarch would be the tasting room. It's located at the end of the tunnel built into the cliff wall that looks out over the sea. Here you can taste some fine, musically aged wine grown in the vineyards while watching the sun glimmer on the waves with the comfort of knowing that your nuclear submarine is not too far away. Let's face it, if you want to be a James Bond villain, you need a room built into a cliff. And a cat, of course. You would also need an aqua discotheque, because no arch-villain worth his salt would go without a disco party submerged in the water. In the photo taken of this luxury, a very real photo, there is a circular pool with a fountain that you can dance around in shallow water. Also down in the fun part are massage rooms, a sauna, a large indoor pool, a judo mat, of course a hairdressing salon, and an indoor winter garden with every oligarch's favorite Corinthian-style columns. As you would expect, there are paintings throughout Putin's mansion. Unsurprisingly, some of it is themed in war, good wars for Russia, including a number featuring the 1812 Battle of Borodino, where the Russians showed Napoleon they were not to be messed with. Another standout painting is called Whoever Comes to Us with a Sword Will Die by the Sword, a color lithograph created in 1942, which we imagine Putin admires when he thinks about the USA. Then there are also bathrooms, mostly all marble, with large mirrors and, of course, bidets. Now here we have to agree with Putin. Seriously, why do we Westerners savagely insist on that dirty habit of using paper to wipe our butts rather than washing them with spray guns like they do in Asia? The mind boggles, but it seems Putin might like water and paper, or maybe the paper's there for when the Brits and Americans visit. And this brings us to Putin's toilet brush. Number 1. Putin's potty. Navalny's team scoured the receipts of goods delivered from abroad to the palace and the vineyard enterprises nearby. And that's where they spotted those $850 a pop toilet brushes, which are made by an Italian firm. The toilet paper holders next to them go for a cool $1,200 each. The investigator said this about the toilets: the annual pension of the average Russian pensioner is in one of Putin's latrines, which he may never enter. Back in the late Middle Ages, British royals had a personal butt wiper saddled with the ignominious title, the Groom of the Stool. We would love to think that Putin has one of his own. Maybe it's that same girl who dances on the pole, who knows? One thing's for sure, those expensive toilet implements are very real. Imagine the cost when there are dozens of bathrooms in the palace and the dakas. Everything in the bathrooms, from the faucets to the door handles to the light fittings and mirrors, are all made by the best money can buy, designed by companies that the average person has never even heard of. Hansgrohe from Germany, Gessi and Vismara Vetro from Italy, Lofen from Switzerland, and Omoikiri from Japan. If you look at their websites, you can spend $15,000 on a 1600mm illuminated mirror made by Lofen for a light. According to the Economic Institute website, it is 3 times more than your average cleaner in Russia earns per year. And we don't mean the groom of the stool. What do you think about the secrets hidden inside Putin's palace? Do you believe the rumors, or is it all just speculation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Now you need to watch how the British royals actually make money, or have a look at who will rule Russia after Putin.